Hello and welcome to the My Dietitian Journey podcast. My name is Adam, co-host and producer. With me, of course, Felicia of Peraza Nutrition and My Dietitian Journey. Joining us today is Miranda, our intern from the Sodexo Internship program. So we're going to get into some of the specifics of her program. Do you want to talk about yourself? Just a quick introduction of who you are, where you're from?
Sure, yeah. So I live right down the street from these guys. I went to Westchester, got my bachelor's at the end of 2020. Then I got my master's in 2022 in community nutrition. And yeah, now I'm just doing this internship and we're here now. So,
all right, let's jump into some stuff. So what made you go into dietetics in the first place?
So originally going into school, I was undecided and I just did not know what I wanted to do. So I looked at the undergrad handbook. I was just looking at all the different majors. And then I saw nutrition and I was like, well, I love food. I love like helping people. I love freshman years when I really got into fitness. So I love fitness. And then I also love science. So all that was combined into nutrition. And I was like, let me try this out. And I loved it. And here we are today.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's an interesting combination of all the stuff that you're into, so that seems like the perfect fit for you.
It literally is perfect.
So what was the most difficult part of your undergrad, or were there any sticking points along the way?
So I remember when they first told me that I would have to do an internship, and I was panicking. There was a whole class about it. They said I'd have to pay for it. I'd have to go through the whole application process, a whole getting matched. I might not get matched. So I was like, oh my God, like I have to do all this. So that was hard, but then I just, got used to the fact that I was going to have to do it to become a dietitian. And then other harder things were just like the science-based classes like organic chem, which I did end up enjoying. And then my last part of senior year was we had to go home because of COVID. So just like learning more how to do virtual based, which wasn't hard, but just different.
What year did you finish your undergrad?
2020.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're a couple years out. So there a gap between undergrad and internship for you? And what did you do in the gap?
There wasn't. So after 2020, I went right into my master's. So I did that. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, that makes sense.
And that was just like all online. So I worked while I was doing that. Still doing it during the pandemic, but it was all online, so it didn't really change anything. And then I finally went into the internship.
So bachelor's, master's, internship. You got your bachelor's, then went into your internship, then did your master's.
Yeah, so there's the master's requirement. So for 2024, you'll have to have your master's before you can go into the dietetic internship and like sit for your exams. There's a lot more like coordinated programs. There's like the master's and the internship combined. And I thought it was funny that you mentioned that the science classes you really enjoyed. It was like my bane of my existence. Did not do super well. My science GPA was on the low side, but
organic chem, right? That was the tough one.
Organic chem. I retook anatomy 1, which there's no shame in that. And I only went up a letter grade to be passing for
all you need to pass. So.
That is all I needed. I went from a D to a C. And then organic chem, I like just made by with like C+ from like biochem and all of that. So those were pretty tough for me to get through.
Yeah,
so.
I'm glad I didn't have to do organic chem. I did A&P 1 and 2 and that was rough, but organic chem is like, I'm glad I don't have to do it.
I think I got like a high B in organic chem and I remember I was like so excited, like telling everybody like,
yeah. I mean, that's all you need, right? I guess, is it a B or you need a C? Mm-hmm. Was it? Okay. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Were you working during your undergrad? Were you volunteering?
So definitely during the summer, like home from college, I worked at a few different nursing homes as a dietary aide. Were you ever a dietary aide?
Yeah. I was
everyone in this room was a dietary aide.
Yep. And we were in a hospital setting. Okay. So
So I did the nursing home. And then I did volunteer a few times at a food bank in Westchester. I also, over the summers too, I was an assistant instructor for a little summer camp for kids, teaching them like baking and cooking, just like basics of that. So I just wanted to make sure I had all these like food and dietary related jobs.
That's what they look for, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm
Even
sure it
like
helps.
being a waitress like counts is like what they say, but I was never that because,
Yeah, you didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
I did that too for a little while. It's not a fun job. Yeah. So you had the relevant experience. You got some volunteer experience. I'm sure that was a leg up for your internship.
Yes.
So you're. Can you just talk a little bit about your program, like what type of program it is?
Mm-hmm, yeah. So Sodexo, it's an on-site supervised practice. You need 1,024 hours, and
Is that typical for like internship programs across the board?
Yeah, the minimum I think is 1,000 hours. There's like a cutoff for like the minimum number of supervised hours.
okay, yeah. So 1,024, we're almost there. But like in looking for my sites, so they will place you in your clinical and food service rotations. But I had to go out and find like community hours and my concentration, which I think we'll talk about a little later. And yeah, you can do virtual too. And yeah.
So where are you at right now in terms of the progression of the internship?
So I'm kind of in between like getting more community hours and doing my concentration.
How far? Like, so I guess it's over the course of 9 months or so?
Oh yeah, I'm
generally?
about like 7, almost 7 months in, I
Okay,
think.
more than halfway.
Yeah.
You can see the
Oh,
finish
yeah.
line from here,
Yeah,
right?
we like track our hours and it says like the % you are done. I think I'm like 82 or something. I'm like,
So is there an online portal like all this stuff gets fed to or something?
so we use this thing called Sakai, and that's where we like submit assignments, and then they have like a Sodexo like internship website where you see your assignments, and then tracking hours is just in a shared Excel sheet that we all have. So I can see like everyone else's hours too. Sometimes I'll look.
So people are
Where
like,
they
See
are.
where everybody else
you're
is.
just you're manually like putting
Yeah.
in hours in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
And it's really important. One thing to note with like an on-site program is the aspect of them setting up your clinical and food service, which is like the hardest thing to set. So with like a distance program, I did a distance program. And so I had to find all of my sites, and food service was a little easier, but clinical was very difficult to find. So that is one like perk to having like an on-site program where they
Yes.
do that for you and you don't have to worry about finding, and they have contracts set up. So that was why I ran into a lot of issues when I tried to find my program sites, was they were already contracted with Sodexo or Aramark or other big companies like that. So
I'm surprised they're just okay with you logging hours in a spreadsheet, like they're just trusting you. Because when I did my internship, I had to, as an externship, I had to log in online to like a web app, and I had to enable GPS.
Oh
so
my
that they
God.
knew that I was there, and if
Wow.
I wasn't, someone would like manually review it, and I would get like these emails about it. So I'm just surprised they're just cool with you guys just throwing hours into a spreadsheet. That's good. I mean, you have a little more
especially for
freedom.
like the community one, like I'll have Felicia like kind of, well, actually all of them, they'll have at the end like them sign an evaluation for you, which you don't really have to like track your hours for. Like they know you were there, like all your preceptors like obviously saw you coming in. But yeah, the community ones, yeah, I'll have like Felicia track my, or I'm tracking mine, but you'll like sign my thing at the end. And yeah, it's just, it's the trusting of
Yeah,
the
just the what's good. That's good that they do that.
yeah.
It felt like really weird having to log in and do GPS on my
That
phone.
is
Like, it was
crazy.
Really, and I forgot I had to
did
go
that.
through all this crap. So
especially the GPS part. For some of the other interns that I've had to sign off on their hours weekly. So there's like a shared portal that I'm in, and they enter their hours, and then I was like signing off weekly to them. So some of them, and then I've had others where it's like I didn't sign anything with hours, and so it was just completely the honor system of
honor system.
the intern following that they've done them all. So
well, I guess at the end of the day, it's your education. You're not cheating yourself if you're
Yeah.
like skimping on your hours or whatever. So
Exactly,
it makes
yes.
sense. So can you describe the application process for Sodexo? Any tips you can share?
Goodness. So it was just like a typical like dietetics process going through DICUS. It was a very long process, but with Sodexo, they also had you make a dietetic portfolio. So I had to make a website just of all my experiences, like classes I've done, assignments that like stood out. And then they also required a 30-minute interview. And they asked, your typical interview questions. And then they also asked like situational questions. So if someone came to me with like renal disease, like what recommendations would I give them? And I remember looking on Reddit before this interview to see like if anyone like said what that interview would be like. And thank God they did, because they did ask me these clinical questions and I had to brush up on it a little bit. But it worked out. So
yeah, Reddit's an interesting resource for that sort of thing. There's
Yeah.
a couple subreddits like r/dietetics, and then RD2B is another big one. But that's cool you found that. The Sodexo internship program is sort of lauded as one of the major programs,
huge,
very
yeah.
competitive. And I guess it's them and Aramark that are the big ones.
yeah.
Big like on-site ones for sure. And with the process, you mentioned DICUS, which it's funny. I like never knew what it stood for. It's like, oh, it's just, you go to DICUS and the D&D digital. And it's like, what are these terminologies even for? But DICUS is that it's like a centralized application service. And then there's the application fee that you have. Then there's called like D&D digital, which is like the matching portion. And then there's also like each internship program has like specific things on their checklist. So if you're in the process of looking at different internships, make sure you go to each of their websites. They have like a checklist. I know Sodexo has like an application checklist of like what to make sure you have before finalizing your application. So
Yeah, they definitely like set me up, I feel like. It was just all about doing it, and
Pretty robust program. I remember I worked for Sodexo for a while as a manager at the hospital down the street, Jefferson. And we hosted a bunch of sessions where all the interns and the internship coordinator were there, and we had to like feed them because you guys were there all day doing, I don't even know what you were doing, but it was multiple times. You weren't there, but I guess it was part of the, there's like you're going in to just do meetings about the internship sometimes, I guess, or no, maybe not, or just part of the hospital rotation. I don't know what they were there for, but it was like multiple times all day sometimes.
it could have been like, there's some of them where they do orientations. Like I had to go to Utah to do my orientation, even though it was distance. And it was like a 3-day like orientation process. We were in like a room. We did like a brush up on clinical. We went over the actual internship. So that could have been part of it. Or like intern gatherings, or if they were doing like any kind of like, assignment-based stuff, it might have been also like if they were doing like a workshop all day long or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I was on the outside looking at it.
Speaking of orientation, though, they did have us go to Orlando for orientation. That was our meeting spot, because
What about Orlando? Why?
I don't know why they chose that, but
weird.
because there's people like all over the country doing this internship, so that was the meeting spot they chose. I didn't complain about it. It was like January. I was going to Orlando.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Sodexo is based in Gaithersburg, Maryland, so I'm surprised.
I think they do have another one there, like the spring or fall
that's their North America HQ, so I'm sure they do all kinds of stuff there. I'm not sure how often dietitians have to go, but like managers go all the time. It's this huge glass building. It's like a display of wealth practically. It's weird. It's like opulent, but it's really nice if you ever end up going. It's like super nice. It's on a huge lake with like a bunch of huge, massive koi swimming around, and there's it's a nice little town too.
Okay.
If you ever get the chance to do training for Sodexo, if you ever end up working for them, Gaithersburg's a pretty cool spot. So do we want to get into the structure of your internship? Is anything virtual that you're doing?
Yeah, I've done multiple virtual things. I've worked with another dietitian. She works for a private practice. It isn't her own. But I've done virtual things with her. We also have virtual meetings the first Monday of like every month, with just, us interns in our like PA, New Jersey region. Just to like talk about things. There's some topics that they have us talk about. And then, there were like 2 class days that were virtual, like an all-day class day with all the interns all over the country, just like going over different things. And there's definitely a lot of virtual aspects to it. So
I'm sorry. I think I missed this. Was there a virtual rotation? I'm like looking at our outline at the same time.
No.
Okay. Gotcha.
I see. Okay.
All on site. I don't know if Sodexo do they mix in virtual rotations? If they don't have to, why would they?
They don't like specifically have it, but if you find somebody like to do your community hours with, you can do a virtual.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's some of the hours that Miranda's doing are virtual for me. So, and that's something I check for any intern that's going to come in, because usually most of the time I'm not working like an 8-hour day sitting at my computer for the practice. So, having like other work to do and making sure that that's approved. So if you are looking for, a preceptor just confirm if you are going to do virtual that your internship allows that.
Are you planning to work for Sodexo after your internship?
I mean, maybe. I know they've like talked to us about like even part-time you can get benefits. So I'm like, that could be nice.
I mean, there's definitely a pipeline between the internship and then hiring dietitians.
Yeah. I feel like I'll definitely have like somewhat of an in, but
oh, you will. You'll know
so.
people. Yeah.
So yeah, I could definitely see it. I've been looking at jobs like kind of on the Sodexo website.
Do you have an interest in doing clinical?
Not really. Like a little bit. Maybe like part-time, like in a hospital setting, but
it's typically what Sodexo would bring you in for. So if you're not into it,
I know. So maybe I'll have to just.
Well, it's interesting because so for the longest time, it was sort of a stereotype that you had to do clinical, and everyone just accepted that. I guess everyone's sort of moving away from that as like a baseline, which is good.
It is good.
So did you have to find any of your preceptors yourself?
Yeah, I found Felicia myself.
Okay.
The other private practice dietitian, the ones I'm working in my concentration with, I found. But they do like my regional director helped me locate some. So they're definitely there to help you. Like it's not all just on you. But yeah, some I did have to find.
Okay.
Did you, when you found me and the other dietitian that you're working with, was it from the Eat Right preceptor directory, or was it somewhere
It wasn't.
else?
So the other private practice one, she actually worked at the hospital I was doing my clinicals at. She worked there part-time and the private practice part-time. And then you, I think, just came up on Google, and I was like, this kind of like fits with what I like. So
that's right down the street, too. That helps.
I mean, I didn't know that at the time, but that is
pretty
a
convenient.
perk.
Small world.
I know.
Are you working right now in your internship?
No, so I'm not working. I'm like taking this internship as my job, my unpaid job. But
that's what it is.
I'm just like, let me just focus on this, like for the time, the assignments, studying for the exam. So I'm taking the time to just focus on that, and I'm like, this is the only time in my life I'll have to do this, and I'll work
for the rest of your life. Yeah, I mean, it's a smart thing.
Yes, but if I wanted to work, I definitely could, like part-time. This is, I would say, pretty flexible. Like once you're done, like clinical, I started with that, and food service, because I was only at clinical and food service 4 days a week. So I feel like I could have like on Fridays or like on the weekends, but
yeah, I guess it would be tough to have a set work schedule, and then changing like rotations would have different demands.
I've thought about like door dashing or something, but
yeah, something like that would work.
Something flexible.
Or remote work or whatever if you could find it. But
some programs, they don't recommend working through your internship, which that's where you're paying them too. It's unpaid, and you're also paying them.
It's a weird arrangement.
But it's one of those things that they have part-time options too. So if you are someone that needs to like keep a job for financial reasons throughout the internship, because that's a long time, if you're not being financially supported by anyone else or have like a ton of money saved, that you might need to be working. So there's a lot of internship programs have like part-time options where then you could be working maybe part-time or, like flexible work environments like that with, being able to kind of like just choose your hours when you're able to work. So,
I guess as long as you accrue the hours throughout your internship one way or another,
exactly,
then you can work or do whatever your pace is. I guess different programs have different degrees of flexibility.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get this done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, yes. I would imagine Sodexo is a little more rigid in terms of what they allow you to do. Has it been directed and sort of funneled? Like, do you feel like the program is on rails, or do you feel like you've had some flexibility in terms of when you do what you're doing?
Definitely flexibility. Like there are like clinical assignments due, but like you can have until the end of the internship to like turn it in. Okay. There are like some like set dates, like the presentation I have tomorrow was like a certain date. But yeah, I feel like
overall it's not too rigid. It's pretty flexible. That's good.
And that's good. Some of the interns I've worked with, they had very specific, like you can only do clinical during this window, or it was like you either choose clinical or community and it has to be done within this window. So some of them, even like the distance programs where I've had interns, there was like a lot of structure for what they were doing. So it's like it had to be during this time frame, which I know when I met with you, I was like, is there certain date? Like, because I'm so used to having interns where it's like, you have to be done this by this time frame and everything, and trying to really set it in. So it's good that they have like some flexibility for you guys. Yeah.
It's interesting because I wouldn't have expected that from Sodexo, being the big corporate, entity that they are.
Yeah.
I thought they would, because not to harp on the management side of it, but it's like everything is kind of regimented, and you need to do this thing at this time, and it's refreshing to hear that in the at least in the internship, seems
the
pretty
interns
open.
I feel like they definitely are a little more laid back probably, and they just know we have a lot going on, so can't complain.
I guess it's a little different as the dietitian, because when Sodexo acquires like a hospital or a chain of hospitals or a big site, they have to bring in dietitians, and the dietitians just kind of come in, do their thing, and bounce. It doesn't seem like the dietitians have a lot of impact on the health of the contract. So you guys can just kind of come in, do your thing. You're experts at Dietetic. So you come in, do your tube feeds, see your patients. You're like, all right, see ya. And the people who control the contracts that Sodexo has for the working relationship, it's not really as influential. So it's a lot of pressure off of dietitians. That's pretty nice. I would imagine it feels pretty good being a dietitian in that setting compared to management. But there are certain roles within clinical that kind of combine those two, where it's like dietitian manager. And we're going to get into your some of the rotations you've done. So you've done clinical already.
Yes, clinical was my first one. I did it at Doylestown Hospital.
Okay.
So I was there for 4 months. It's a very suburban hospital, 247 beds. And there I did my clinicals. Were you going to say something?
No, that's a decent. I'm just thinking 247. Okay. That's a decent sized hospital.
Yeah. It was pretty big. It was really nice. There were like the cardiac unit was like brand new. Like I was like, I could stay here. Like hopefully I don't have to, but like it was nice. But I did my clinical, did the clinical nutrition management and patient services. But the clinical breakdown, so I did 4 weeks of basic, which was focusing on heart failures, diabetes, and any GI patients. And then 4 weeks of intermediate, so that was enteral, liver and pancreas, and oncology. And then 4 weeks of advanced, which was the TPN and pulmonary and renal. So.
Do you go?
I was going to say it's interesting. Well, 4 months is a long time frame. I was at my inpatient clinical for 6 weeks, and then I had 2 weeks of staff relief. So that was 2 months in total. And it's interesting how they broke it down in terms of like basic, intermediate, and advanced. Because for me, it was just like literally tube feeding and like patients who were like on vents. And then it was like the rest of the hospital, and that was it. And then it was like whoever you saw, it was whoever you saw. We had like a checklist as to we needed to see a patient with cardiovascular disease, one with diabetes, and so it was like a patient would come in, and my preceptor would be like, "Oh, you could check it off of your list now." And so, but it's interesting the way that they broke it down like that. It feels like you get a really good kind of comprehensive
look.
look.
Focus on like just those ones. I didn't like get them like mixed in, but for the most part, I was just focusing on like enteral, and then I went into TPN. So it was nice. 247
bed. I feel like 200 to 300 beds for a hospital is kind of a sweet spot in terms of, from my observation, working with a team of dietitians. It's a big enough hospital for you to get in and get a lot of experience. You're definitely going to be on a team of dietitians. You'll work with a clinical nutrition manager. There's a big enough cafeteria where there's enough business to do some things there and get involved. They probably have programs that involve the food service. There's a lot of patients. Usually there's outpatient. There's a lot of things you can get into. If you go smaller, like 100 beds, you might be the only dietitian.
Yes.
And that could be madness if you're the only one, because it's just you. And if you're in like a big hospital, like 400 or 500 plus beds, it's a madhouse. I was at Lehigh Valley Hospital, the main one, and it's like 500 beds. So a fleet of dietitians. Like there's like 15 or 20.
Oh my god.
Food service was insane. There was like 8 or 10 carts going out delivering trays. It was absolute chaos, and I never ever want to step foot in like a hospital that big again as an employee. But I could see like so you said it seemed like you had a good experience at Doylestown.
Yeah, I did.
And I was at Jefferson Tarsdale, which is like a similar size hospital. And I would say if you're a dietitian looking to get into clinical, that range of beds and that size is probably a good target to shoot for. I would not want to go smaller or bigger personally, just having the experience that I've had. And it seems like you had a similar experience.
Yeah.
I had I was at Grandview, and there was a 200-bed hospital, and they had 3 dietitians, and one of them was part-time, the other 2 were full-time, and then they had the clinical nutrition manager who managed food service and the dietitians. But it was a pretty good, like, I don't think that they were ever like running around like crazy in the 200-bed hospital. And then they had the outpatient dietitian who was there and would like pick up if they needed to have someone like pick up the inpatient side of it, but she did all like the outpatient and everything. So
Interesting.
So, did you speak on any of like your assignments or learning activities, or do you want to get into any of that if you haven't?
Yeah, we can get in. So after like each clinical, like the basic, intermediate, we had to do like a case study on a patient we had. And then we had to find a journal article to go along with that. And they were fine assignments. Kind of interesting, like doing a real life case study rather than one just like assigned to you in school. Let me see, what else?
And for my internship, we had, and I know a lot of them are very similar in terms of like, you're really going through like the whole MNT process, nutrition care process. And like, so like every day when I would go in, it's like, all right, who's our new patients who need initial assessments? And then it was like, who are our follow-up patients? And then we would do like the screening, the education, implement, ICU rounds. And then I also had a case study and a presentation to do in mine as well. It was presenting to the 3 dietitians that were there, and one other intern who happened to be there at the same time. So it was a very small presentation.
Yeah, that's good. Did you have? Were there any highlights? Do you have any favorite parts? Anything memorable?
Of clinical?
Yes.
Oh, I did see a tube feeding placement. So I was in like the surgery room. I got a little woozy at the end.
Yeah, I could see that.
There was like no blood, but it was just like...
It's still weird.
Yeah. And then I saw the barium swallow study, so I got to wear that like lead suit. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I was in a swallowing evaluation too. Yeah, and it was so interesting because the patient would sit there and then they'd give them like applesauce, or they'd give them this, and then you'd like literally watch it go down their esophagus. And it's like...
I kind of wanted to do it on myself.
Nice.
Just to see what my swallowing looked like.
Weird. How's my swallow? Yeah,
right. I know. But yeah, that was probably the most interesting part. It was, like I said, a suburban hospital, not like much trauma going on, which I kind of would have liked to see. That could have been fun, but I don't
know. What kind of things would dietitians do in a trauma setting?
Not usually much right away, but then it might be like tube feeding, kind of like an assessment for malnutrition, depending on like the severity of the trauma too. And then like if it was depending on what the source of the trauma was, like burns or things like that, there's like a whole care approach that goes along with that as well.
There's a supplement that we used to give to patients recovering from surgery, and I think burn victims got it too, where it was like arginine and another amino acid.
Glutamine usually.
Yeah, and it was specific to like tissue repair.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, I guess you get into.
Yep, both of those help with like promoting wound healing and faster recovery. And then some of them, most of them have like vitamin C, which also helps with like the healing process. And then a lot of them are also like protein based too, which can help with the healing process too. So.
I remember it tasted disgusting.
You tried it?
I did. Yeah.
We had to try ours.
Oh,
it's funny because when I was in my clinical, they like had us try a lot of the products because they were like, this is what your patients are having. Like you should have an understanding as to like what they're getting. And it gave me a very good perspective as to like recommending certain ones, because I'm like, this one tastes like chalk. And sometimes I would say to them like, this doesn't taste good, but if you put ice in it, it's a little more tolerable or something like that.
I guess you could like tell them what to zhuzh it up with. So.
And that usually helps, you know.
Zhuzh it up real good. This like the arginine glutamine combo, it was like a packet of like goo. And you would squeeze it out. You'd rip the top and squeeze it out. I think you were meant to squeeze it into something. And I just took it right to the dome. And it was absolutely gross. It was a mistake. And that was just me being an idiot coming back from the gym like, oh, arginine. Yeah, I'm going to get the, whatever. It was a bad idea. I can't see that mixing well into anything.
No, usually applesauce or like pudding or something like that.
Maybe pudding.
I know in the one I think it was in the hospital I was at, or it might have been the long-term care facility. They had a blender. So sometimes they would make like a milkshake for patients with ice cream and then throw all of that stuff in it. And that went over a lot better because it's like ice cream was masking the taste of a lot of it.
Yeah.
So that helps.
Yeah, we had fortified ice cream at one point too. It was like Ensure ice cream. I guess you guys would be involved in dishing that stuff out, like Glucerna, Ensure. There was a bunch of those. Nepro.
I actually kind of like Ensures.
Yeah,
I feel like they're pretty good.
They're not bad.
They're not too bad. And they had clear ones. And actually in bariatric surgery, like post-op, we recommend like the clear options for people who can't do like the milky kind of based ones. And those are, people like those a lot better because it's almost like a juice. So
yeah, remember those. All right, so you were in a food service rotation also.
Yes.
I guess this stuff would bleed into more as well when we were just talking about supplements and everything. So was that in a hospital too? Or?
No, so I did my food service at Bristol Myers Squibb. It is a pharmaceutical company. It's like similar to Pfizer.
Okay.
And then they made Eliquis, which is like a pretty common like blood clot preventing drug. So yeah, I was like, what am I doing at a pharmaceutical place? But
did
it's
they
like
have a cafeteria? Is that
yes, that's what I did. I served like food to the employees.
Do you remember how big the place was?
I think at some point there was like 2,000 employees.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's huge. There's like places like in Tampa, just like all over.
But there was one around here.
Yeah, in Lawrenceville, New Jersey.
And I guess that's just a massive cafeteria if it's like 2,000 employees.
Oh my gosh, it was huge. Like it was the nicest cafeteria I've ever seen in my life. Like I couldn't believe it was for like employees. I'm like, this is what you get for lunch. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and the prices were so good. Like we had like gourmet foods. These chefs were amazing. They'd get like a bowl of salmon with like quinoa and vegetables. It was like $11. Like at a restaurant, that'd be like.
Is this Sodexo's got the contract for it, I guess? So I'm wondering maybe if that was a blue chip account where they kind of spice everything up. There are certain high value accounts that Sodexo has where they give them like the business, like they really get into it. You know, they seriously do. It's
maybe
like
because
they call it a blue chip account. Yeah. That's the term.
It's such a vast difference because I did mine at a school district, actually Pennsbury School District.
Oh yeah, right up the street.
And it was under different management at the time for the food service contract company, and it was a school district, so it was like complete opposite of like working in a pharmaceutical company in like the corporate setting. Yeah, because it's like I'm trying to get kids to like test out like a chickpea or something like that, where it's like they're serving salmon and quinoa. It's like just
she wasn't running around dressed up like a pea pod or nothing like that, right?
Yeah. I was a pea pod.
Did she see that picture? No, you
I don't know. I'll have to show you. I was a pea pod at one point,
and you were a banana, right?
I was a banana, a pea pod, and an apple.
I cannot believe they made you do that.
Wow. Oh, I volunteered. I saw them. So my dietitian that was there left and joined. The Navy as a dietitian, 3 days into me being there. She's like, by the way, I'm leaving. And they didn't have a dietitian, and I was like going through her stuff in there when they were hiring someone, and they had all these costumes, and I was like, can I wear these and like give out stickers? And so we had like National School Lunch Week, and I gave out stickers to all the kids that had
Were you at the high school or?
I did go to the high school, but I was dressed up for the elementary schools.
Okay, that's cute.
I think the older kids would have just laughed at me. The little kids were like so excited that I was walking around in a costume. So
I feel like you would have got some things chucked at you at the high school, maybe.
Probably.
So, can you describe what sort of things you did in the food service rotation?
Yes. So I worked very closely with the executive chef. He was amazing. We did like inventory, went over ordering, menu planning, and then I just helped him. Like we would make stuff. The salad bar there was like absolutely insane. So we would make like different dishes for that every day just because he wanted to. Like he was so like just all about food, and I loved it. That's like, cool. But yeah, the salad bar would like wrap around. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And yeah, I would work with the chefs at different stations. Like there was a global station, the salad bar, chef's table, where they would just have like different things every day, like these gourmet foods, like I said. And then I worked a little bit with the catering team. That was hectic a lot of the time. They're just going.
Were they catering like conference rooms or remote sites, things like that?
Throughout the building, yes. Like there was a specific chef just for doing catering. It was like just this huge building. I couldn't believe it.
Were there dietitians there?
There was one, and she would travel to like all the different like locations.
Okay.
I went with her a few times to different ones. And the other cafeterias were definitely not like the one I was at. So I'm like, oh, I get this nice one.
Yeah, you get the bougie one.
The bougie, yes.
That's cool.
Yes.
So it's a good executive chef, I feel like makes or breaks an account or like a job like that.
Yes.
Like if they're into it and they're like cool.
He was so nice, like just loved his job, loved all the employees. He wasn't like a Gordon Ramsay, so.
Yeah, I feel like with chefs, it's like one way or another.
Yeah.
Either they're cool or they're absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And they can both work, but you don't want to work for the guy that's crazy.
Yeah.
Generally.
It's funny because I was looking and you had on there that you did like some demos and promoting like simple meals with like lavender cupcakes. And when I saw that, I was just laughing to myself because I'm like, we were giving out corn dogs the one day. And it was like, that was like a highlight of the week of like giving out, like all the staff was like so excited about these corn dogs. And it's like lavender cupcakes.
Right. So when I went with the dietitian to different ones, she would do like, this is all for the employees, a salad dressing demo, like 3 different homemade salad dressings, the Simple Mills cupcakes. We made like a lavender icing to go with it just because she was working with that brand. So she was like, let me just, promote it.
Yeah. You got to jazz it up at a nice account like that.
Yeah.
That's what they do. That's cool. So there was a dietitian that went to, did they travel like far?
She's
or just
been
on
to,
site at that campus or whatever?
There was another location in like North Jersey.
Okay.
Like an hour and a half away. So she'd go there.
So a drive, not a flight. She wouldn't go that far.
But she has been to the Tampa one. So
okay. Just wondering if they're regional or up and down the East Coast or how it works for dietitians.
I think there's only like 3 corporate Sodexo dietitians, and she's one of them. So
yeah.
It's crazy.
It seems like a pretty sweet gig.
Probably.
I told her boss, I said, please hire me.
Well, you know somebody.
I know. So
that helps. And if you make a good impression and you keep in touch or you have their contact at least, that's networking, it's important. So
I couldn't believe all of this was just for employees. Like the salad dressing demo. And then we did 2 cooking classes, like a Spanish one and an Italian where we made homemade pasta. So I did that for the first time.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool.
And it was a lot easier than I thought. I thought it was more involved, but it's like kind of simple.
So you're making your own pasta at home now? Then
haven't done that yet, but I will.
Cool.
I'm going to do that.
So were there any specific kinds of assignments or learning activities that you had to were you turning in stuff? Like, how does it work?
For food service?
For the food service one, I guess.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, so like every rotation, and you let me know if that's the same for Sodexo. Every rotation, there's assignments that you turn in that are like for the internship specifically, and then there's usually like a checklist of like competencies, and then either it's like a reflection or an activity or something that you would submit. And then if you're doing like a coordinated program, then there's usually like the grad work along with like the actual internship work too. So was that kind of similar for you too?
Every rotation, like you said, there was assignments to turn in. So for food service, I had to do one, I set up a booth just promoting like a dish and nutritional benefits of the dish. So it was like a mango papaya salsa. So I did the benefits of papaya.
Yeah. Why not? It's so relatable. Yeah.
And then there was like a sustainability assignment, just like looking at what they're doing for sustainability. There wasn't much for the food service, which was fine.
How long was that one?
Food service, 5 weeks.
Okay.
Yes.
Pretty short, I guess. But
yeah,
I feel like it's enough time to...
Definitely enough.
That's definitely enough time. Mine was 13 weeks, but there was also there's a school nutrition education component. And after probably 4 weeks, what was just very different, which is why I didn't feel so drawn out, was the dietitian left, and then there was no other dietitian, and then I was the pretend dietitian that I wasn't supposed to be. And then they hired someone. So I ended up learning everything from the dietitian. She joined the Navy. Then I was handling things. And then I taught the new dietitian how to use the new system.
You as an intern taught them.
Yeah, exactly. No one else knew how to use it. So I was I'm teaching her how to use this and that. And then I ended up being done a week after she started. So it felt a lot like,
So you turned over the reins to this new dietitian as the intern, whatever.
It was the oddest, because the food service manager there was like, they wanted to hire me, and I'm like, I can't do any of this stuff. And I'm supposed to be learning from.
I'm not a dietitian yet, actually.
It was my first rotation too. So I was
God. Nice. Good introduction to that world. It's funny because it seems like did you pick that as or were you involved in the selection process for that directly at all?
No, not
You just kind of landed on that?
Yeah. They originally told me I thought I was going to be at Campbell's, but they changed it, and now I was at Bristol Myers.
So that's like a way better experience than I've seen some other interns get, because when I was working at Jefferson as the manager, I had to take on interns occasionally for like a day or two to work with me. And some of them wound up at that hospital for both clinical and food service. So they were there for months. And that was, I guess they probably went to other campuses too, but that's not much of a variety in terms of your environment. So it sounds like you got the way better deal.
I'm so glad I wasn't in like a school or like a hospital again, because I've had those experiences and I'm over it. So this was fun.
Different, new.
Very different.
And the corporate setting is like interesting too. It's funny because you said Campbell's, and I used to work for ShopRite, and their corporate is Wakeford, and we would have like meetings at different places. And the one time they hosted all of us at Campbell's, and they had all these test kitchens for like what it would look like if it was like this culture, or what it might look like at this budget level. And it was just like, this is all in your building, like, and so I can't even imagine what they also probably would have had for their employees. Like, you probably would have had also like pretty high level stuff. So it was free soup.
The corporate gigs they seem to be few and far between, and when people get them, they retire there because of how sweet of a deal it is. Like, compared to a hospital or a long-term care facility, or I guess even a school, the corporate setting it's like a banker's hours type of deal, 9 to 5, 8 to 4 or whatever.
Like, you don't have to go for holidays, like weekends. So I'm like, this is perfect.
Exactly. And you
Sign me up.
They don't drag you through the mud with a lot of little nonsense, because it's sort of a luxury to be in that environment for even just what you're doing. It's like not super high stakes. Like, you're not worried about killing a patient, giving them the wrong food or whatever. It's like, what kind of fish do we want on the lunch menu for Fish Friday or whatever in the corporate setting? Yeah, I mean, it's like I worked with a Sodexo manager who wound up, I can't remember if she left Sodexo or not, but she wound up at a corporate account, and I caught up with her later, and she loved it and told me about it. So it seems like, if they have a dietetics position open, if you happen to, I mean, that's a good deal.
Oh, yes.
So I guess, were there any highlights? Were there any memorable moments specifically?
I mean,
or were you just in awe of all the
I loved it all, but
I
think the cooking classes for sure, just those like demonstrations, that was really fun. We just made all these like cool desserts and foods, of course. But yeah, I mean, it all was great there. So
good deal.
No complaints.
All right. So then next you got into your community rotation. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So yeah, I'm kind of still working on that. And community, I kind of just was working on like from the start of the internship, like I did a booth for National Nutrition Month at the hospital, but that counted as community hours.
Okay.
So it's just kind of an ongoing thing, but you're supposed to get 136 hours total. And I've done a few different things. I did an outpatient pulmonary presentation, working with private practices, working with Felicia. I sat in at a diabetes class at another hospital, went to a food bank. So there's a whole bunch of different options you can do.
And you're just kind of cobbling it together with these variety of things.
Just tracking my hours in Excel. And
right, of course. And as long as you hit your number, you're good by the end.
Yeah.
Do they have a certain time frame that you must do that within?
No, just whenever you get it done.
By the end of the program, I guess? Okay.
Were you at WIC at all?
No.
Which is interesting, because I know that a lot of the internship programs that I've looked at and then had interns for, they had like flexibility with community where they could choose, but they had to do at least like 1 or 2 days at WIC.
Yeah.
And mine was 4 weeks at WIC, which was way too long.
Yeah.
Like way too long. It was a public health nutrition. And by like the 3rd day, the staff was like, "Why are you still here?" It's like, don't know why I'm still here. But But yeah, that's one of the community sites that a lot of programs require you to be out is WIC. So
They did also require us to go to a food bank because there was some assignments that like tailored to being at the food bank, but that's like no
What
big
did you
deal.
do at the food bank?
So there I was like on the warehouse shift. So I just like sorted frozen meals that they received and like the different proteins. So like chicken frozen meals, turkey frozen meals, beef. And then we'd pack them all into boxes and then they'd ship them out to wherever. So
Yeah. I know we've got a few places like that not too far from here. Where'd you go
it
for
was
food bank?
Caring for Friends in Ben Salem.
Okay. Yeah, not too familiar, but
Yeah,
heard of it.
I just was looking around and that one looked...
some of like the food pantries or the food banks, they'll do like some of the dietitians or like that I've seen interns do is like they'll do like a little card or like a table set up to say like, here's how you can use these items that are in your pantry box or something like that as a way to kind of say like, hey, here's how you can make this meal stretch or, you know, balance these out together. So because sometimes people, you kind of get what's there in a sense. So it's, and sometimes it wouldn't always be the most nutritious. So it's like, here's how we can, you know, modify this a little bit, or they would have sections separated by like, you know, more diabetes focused or cardiovascular. And so they would say like, these are little low sodium products or things like that. So sometimes that can help, but it's pretty limited with what options are really just there. So.
And that's like what our food bank assignment is like taking what items they're getting in these boxes and like making a meal out of it. So
was there a highlight or anything particularly interesting that you've done for community so far?
So the one cooking class did count as community hours. So, you know, I love that cooking class. But yeah, just seeing like what a dietitian does like in a community setting, which is just so different from clinical and stuff. So just getting that perspective I like. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Did it count was it considered community when you were at ShopRite and you were doing all that? Because did they call you a community dietitian?
Yeah, so I was my title was a retail dietitian, but it was a community position. And that actually counts for what's interesting about ShopRite. I used to recommend like all my interns, like go get a job there, your first job. It's a great place. And they don't really hire retail dietitians anymore at the store level. There's very few that are left. They're much more corporate and they do a lot of virtual stuff now where then they handle like at the corporate level or with like remote dietitians. So it's not as robust as it used to be where there was like dietitians almost at every store. And
I feel like COVID killed that.
COVID really did. And but that's a community position. And I had a lot of interns that came even from like Aramark and Sodexo who would come with me for like 2 or 3 days and they would do like a cooking demo or we would do a class or a store tour with like the Girl Scouts or something like that. And it was all their community hours. So
yeah, maybe not as available as it used to be, but it's still applicable if you ever find something like that. So I guess technically, are you in your concentration rotation right now?
So like I said, kind of both community and concentration, just kind of doing those at the same time. So actually let me start. The concentration is in sports nutrition. Let me start over. The concentration is called leadership.
Okay. We want to start over and start over? That's all right. It's all staying in. All right.
Okay, so
What is a concentration rotation? Because I think you're the first to that we've spoken with here that has had one of those.
So yeah, I think that's a Sodexo thing. So my concentration is in leadership, but there was other ones in diabetes, oncology, wellness. There was a culinary one. So that's where you just focus on like those specific things. But leadership is, actually wrote this down from the website. You will use leadership, strategic planning, negotiation, and project management to design your own rotation.
Oh.
So I kind of designed my own rotation, focusing on sports nutrition.
Okay. Oh, okay. Now it makes sense.
Yes.
Got it. We're all there. All right.
Yes.
So as a function of your leadership rotation, you've designed a rotation around sports nutrition.
Yes, exactly.
What's that been like so far?
It's been good. I've been with a dietitian. He has his own private practice out of a gym. So just talking with him, and he's been like, he's kind of in the middle of writing like a book. I've been kind of seeing like how he's doing that. And then the next 2 weeks I will be with the dietitian at Drexel, the sports dietitian there.
Okay.
And that I've been looking forward to that since the beginning of this internship, because that's like my last like big thing really. So I'm excited for that. And yeah.
So it's a gym. The guy's got to practice out of a gym, like
yeah,
a
it's
big
like
box
inside
gym?
of it. It's like a small one. It's just,
Okay, like a no-name gym?
Yeah, no.
Okay, not like a Planet Fitness or Retro or something like that.
But he does like work virtually, but he does have an office like in the
a gym. Mm-hmm. Weird.
I know.
There was a gym that I was working with for a while, where they would refer like individuals to me, and it was a women-owned gym. And then it was only for women, and they had a dietitian there. But she just became like so overloaded with how many people. And then she was doing like a meal kind of catering on the side. But she had like an office right off of like the studio. And so she would just see patients and all the individuals that came in. It's like, hey, go check out our dietitian over there in the corner. So it's a nice gig, because people are coming obviously because they want to get healthy and all that. Yeah. And so it's like perfect combination. So yeah, it was cool.
I guess it's easier to work with people who want to get healthy, who are kind of starting from a place of being pro nutrition and like self-help minded, I guess.
Yeah, they're in those stages where they're like seeking assistance. Might not always be the most motivated, but it's a lot different than in clinical when you're being forced to see a dietitian or someone has to come by your room because it's like, you're on my rounds today and I know you don't want to hear about sodium and I know you're going to eat bacon when you leave, but this is where we're at.
They're going to complain that they can't eat bacon while they're there.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So you have career aspirations in the world of sports nutrition.
Yeah, that's definitely my like what I want to do most right now. So I will also maybe the corporate dietitian.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, sports dietitian for sure. I've always just been into like the fitness world. And like having like an office in a gym, like I feel like that could be something like really cool. It just like combines everything that I love about nutrition, which is why I like picked this major. And I feel like as of now, sports is like what I really want to do. So
does that dietitian in the gym, does he train people? Does he own the gym?
No, he's not like a personal trainer. He just, I think he's just like friends with the owner. And he just like, I think there's there's also like a physical therapist, like kind of in the gym too.
Okay.
Yeah. It's called Body Dynamics.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's a nice little setup though.
Yeah.
Would you be looking like kind of that aspect of, because I know sometimes when they say sports like dietitian, I know there's dietitian that worked with like the Phillies and there's dietitian that works with the Eagle, like all different kinds of like NFL teams, things like that. So are you like would that be an area? Or are you more so like, the average person going to the gym, like that kind of, sport nutrition?
I guess the long-term goal would definitely be like NFL teams or like just high up sports teams like that. But right now, just people that like fitness. I mean, it doesn't even have to be just like fitness people, but I just like that world to be in. So
yeah, it's definitely a world you can get into with this. I worked with a guy, an intern through Sodexo, and he got in with the Phillies and he loved it. So it's definitely available. It's around.
Yeah.
So any words of advice for interns looking to get into or looking to do their internship in a private practice?
Yeah, I would just say look around. That's exactly what I did. Like I said, how I found Felicia. And then just be open to learning everything. There's literally so much that goes into a private practice that we've talked about the past like almost 2 weeks, and I'm sure there's still so much more. But yeah, it's definitely something I could also see myself doing. So I love learning everything behind the scenes. Like you're doing literally everything yourself. So it's crazy.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that you can do where you can just kind of get into it part-time and do whatever your pace.
And like build it up over time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Felicia was working full-time and did this part-time and accepted insurance and like did that. It's all part-time or full-time, whatever you want. She was full-time for a couple of years where it was her only source of income and she was doing well and it was an all-day, everyday thing. And then it's back to part-time now and it's just whatever you kind of want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Like you make your own schedule, be flexible. So that's what I really like too.
Yeah.
And you never really know like what you might be like interested in doing, that it might be a good opportunity to like, with having, I think that's kind of, as you're describing everything about your rotation so far, it sounds like you've had a lot of really like unique different experiences
Yes.
that gave you insight as to like other job opportunities as well. And then also, you know, like, hey, this could be a good pairing of doing this and that. I never thought about that. And, you know, you mentioned like being open-minded, that's definitely important, even if it's like a rotation where you're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to like this, but
Yes.
there can certainly be an aspect that can open your eyes to something else that you can do or things that you can pair together. So
Exactly.
it's really important.
Do you have any? So Sodexo's program is really competitive to get into. What do you think gave you the edge getting into it in the first place?
Oh gosh. I guess just I feel like the dietetic profile or portfolio that I had to make like really helped because it's just more personalized. Like you could kind of see more like what I'm into, what I've done, and I guess the interview too. Just it's obviously showing your personality more as well. Yeah, I feel like there's the food related experiences I've had, the dietary aid, food banks, volunteering. So.
Do you feel that did they bring up your GPA or your performance in college in any capacity?
I don't think so. I did, like, I had to submit my transcript and stuff, but I don't really think that was talked about in, like, the interview, but...
And I guess, did you do any kind of extracurriculars in college? Were you in any organizations or groups or any activities?
I did, like, an intramural volleyball and, like, softball team. What else? Yeah, I feel like...
Were you
You did
part of
some
like their
stuff.
dietetic association or
No,
anything?
I never did that.
And so you can be the most. There was someone in my undergrad who had a 4.0 GPA and zero experience and did not even get an interview for like Sodexo or Aramark. I got interviews. I did not get into either of those. They were like my top two choices. My science GPA wasn't great, but I had experience in like clinical and community. So they have like a rating system where it's like you get points for different things. Like a lot of internships go by that system. And then it's like the interview is like a huge piece of it as well, like your personal statement, all of that.
Right.
But, you know, you can have a lot of really great experience and, you know, it might not be something that still gets you in. So like, I just don't want people to feel bad if they don't get in to like their top choice because you can really have a lot of great things. But the more well-rounded you are in terms of like, having a higher, you know, GPA plus the community and the clinical. And then if there's any like little unique things that you're doing too, that can kind of set you apart. And then you could talk about at like an interview too. That can also be, you know, a really great way to go about it. So
Yeah, I know. I remember thinking like in undergrad, I had to do like all these things. I had to be a part of that like dietitian group, like in college. But like, no, you don't have to just...
Yeah, other things matter more.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting because there are some aspects of higher education where your institution and your program are like a make or break thing, and then your reputation hinges upon it. Or like there are certain, you know, there are law firms that only hire out of Harvard and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's not really like that for dietetics. You just kind of go do your thing and get through your program and get what you can out of it, and then what you do afterwards is kind of more about what you put into it. That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
and it also very much depends too on like how many people apply. Like, did they tell you how many people applied your year for?
I forget. I feel like it wasn't that many, but they actually told me they got like no applicants for this next coming one.
That's crazy. When I applied, and I think this is like a COVID like kind of
Definitely,
difference too. They said they had over like 200 applicants, and they were interviewing like 40. And I was, you know, so
Yeah.
I didn't feel bad like not getting in because I was like, out of like all of those people, I still got an interview. But
Right,
it's
yeah.
like
Yeah.
that many people.
You were stacked too in terms of like getting into it. Like you had letters of recommendation from Sodexo chefs and managers. You had connections going in.
Yeah.
And it was just that competitive that year.
Yeah.
whatever.
You must have had a very competitive year.
I mean, there's a lot less, because I think they only had 5, they had like 5 or 10 on-site interns for their program in like the Pennsylvania location or something.
We had 5.
So it was very like small. And then also I think Aramark, they had like 10, like it was a very like tight window. And then it was like the distance programs, they had more spots available because it was, you know, basically how many students could be under, you know, the certain director that was in that area. But I think a lot of programs when I was applying, it was like on-site distance. There was not a lot of coordinated programs as much as there is now. And a lot more people were looking for on-site versus like, I think with COVID, you know, and having more flexibility with some of these like virtual options and also more internship programs. Like we interviewed a lot of other dietitians from interns from different programs where it's like, man, I wish that this was available when I was in my internship to apply for.
Right. KBDI probably didn't even exist when you were an intern.
Yeah, no, it didn't. And that's like that would have been right up my alley of, you know, private practice and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So
complete business dietetic internship.
Yeah.
Complete with a K.
Yes, complete with a K. Had a lot of really great interns from them. But yeah, so that's something else to kind of think about too, is like, you know, there's a lot more options now than there was before. So
any parting words of advice for prospective dietitians looking for an internship or just getting into undergrad or anything like that?
Oh, yes. Definitely for the internship and even undergrad too. Like, just don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm not a dietitian with like 10, 20 years experience. So like, I don't know a lot of things. So asking questions is obviously how you learn. I like stayed pretty organized in college, and now I have a binder that has like a lot of my clinical assignments in it. Just a few like patients, like their names crossed off and stuff, you know, HIPAA. But just to like look back on, and talking to like the other interns has helped me so much. Like we're the only ones that know what we're going through right now, so they can definitely help. And your internship director, like the one who put me in my clinical and food service places. I cried on the phone a few times to her already. Not with you or anything, but just like other times when I was just like having a hard time. And yeah, that's what they're there to help you for. So
I'm sure it gets really rough, and I'm sure it's really helpful to have other interns as a support group and your coordinator as sort of a mentor and a guide.
Yeah,
I'm sure it helps a lot.
And then my last big thing is just like be open to learning everything, because I thought I was going to hate clinical. I thought I was going to hate food service, but as we know, food service turned out to be my favorite thing ever. So
yeah, no, didn't see that coming.
Like I didn't even know a corporate dietitian was really like a thing. So yeah.
That seems to be one of the biggest, most valuable aspects of an internship, is that it exposes you to all these things you would have known even existed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Before you worked for ShopRite, I didn't even know they had dietitians. So all kinds of stuff.
And I only found out that I didn't know they existed until I was on like a wellness board. I used to work at a YMCA, which is a nonprofit organization. And I used to work there, and I was on their wellness board, and I didn't really do anything, but I was like representing being a dietitian on the board. And the owner because they're all like member owned, the owner was at the meeting and their dietitian was leaving. And I was like, how did I not know that there was a dietitian right up the street?
It's like you never know.
Yeah. So being open to learning, definitely. And it's good that you have that like community of your like fellow interns, but also that relationship with your director.
Yes.
We had shared information with the interns, and like afterwards, like when you're going to like study for the exam and like getting ready, and just being able to have that support system, people who are in the same place as you at the same time can be really helpful. So
yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Miranda, for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Appreciate having
fun.
you. It's great having you. And those of you listening and watching, please feel free to leave a comment. We have Miranda's contact information if we need to get in touch with her. She's probably on YouTube somewhere too, so feel free to ask questions.
I'm not anymore.
We'll get back to you. No YouTuber, no stuff anymore. Maybe in the future. Who knows? You never know.
Maybe.
Yeah, but that's going to do it for us here at the My Dietitian Journey podcast. Thanks so much for being with us.